So, Chad over at Rate Per Mile recently posted something about the driver shortage. So that created, you know, some interesting discussions going on. Um, so, if you know who I am and you know my history, um, I was a recruiter that became a driver because I make more doing this than I did being inside at the carriers. Um, so, of course, that immediately started with the driver saying, "Oh, you know, um, the article was about the ATA report saying that there's no real shortage of drivers." Yeah, I've been saying that for over a decade, um, and I did that because Jeff Garrow showed me how to read the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That you can see we have more people with CDLs than we have driving positions. Not just open driving positions, driving positions, period. So you have more people with CDLs than that. And it's not like, hey, we have 100 driving positions and we have 110 people with CDLs. No. It's like we have 100 driving positions and we have 400 people with CDLs. That's the difference between the two most of the times you see the reports. So, why do people have CDLs and not drive? Why are so many carriers having such a hard time finding drivers? Of course, drivers chimed in and immediately went to it's pay. I was making this same amount back in the 80s and 90s. Back in the 80s and 90s, you were also running 2 logbooks. Now, we're under ELD. I understand some trucks are exempt. If you get caught running 2 logbooks now, you're SOL. Period. That ship on ELD has sailed. It's never coming back. So, what is the difference between what they are saying it would take to go OTR versus what they're actually making? Most of them were saying that it would take at least 1,800 to go out OTR for 4 weeks at a time. I asked, well, why aren't they getting that? And they immediately went to, well, the carriers don't want to pay it. I have the job groups that I manage. I have carriers that I work with privately. I can tell you that I have plenty of fleets that are advertising on the boards that I know personally. They're paying that. So it's not just about the pay. So sent those drivers, told them, hey, I know plenty of places that are paying exactly what you're asking for. Absolutely. So send them the links. It's been a few days because I have to approve everyone that comes into the group. Nope, they're not in there. So also send them links to the ones that messaged me privately. I sent them the message to, or the links to the carriers that I know that their hazmat side, they're paying anywhere from 2,500 to 2,800 per week is what their OTR drivers are averaging. Average out 3 to 4 weeks at a time. Still nothing. That old saying of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. That's the frustration that happens a lot in the recruiting side. Because the drivers will say this all day long, but then they don't follow through. So, ultimately, that's their decision. It is on them. But when they say this pay doesn't exist anymore, and when I show them that it does, and they don't do anything, it's on them. Nobody else can force that issue. But so, what is it that I'm seeing have a success with recruiting? That's really what it comes down to. The carrier OTR model of 3 to 4 weeks at a time, X cents per mile, and then typically back for 1 to 2 days, see your family, get back on the road. There are some drivers that absolutely are looking for that and want that. The vast majority of drivers are not interested in it whatsoever. If you look at the burnout rate of first year and why they put on exit surveys, they didn't want to be away from home that often. It's why companies that are doing local have very hard time, or have very easy times filling local positions. Carriers that are doing regional are also having an easy time. Speaking of ELDs, yeah, go away. I'm literally waiting on paperwork at a dock. Carriers that are running regional, that are paying anywhere between $1,300 or more regional, especially off on the weekends, they have no problem finding drivers whatsoever. I know fleets that have a waiting list. I also know carriers, fleets that have 10 open trucks. I'm not expecting those fleets to be around in a year, especially with how many fleets are collapsing now, because it's just not sustainable now. And the biggest thing is that, in 2020, so many people flooded the industry because $6 a mile. Well, $6 a mile was not the new norm, even though so many people thought that $6 a mile, that's going to be the new norm. And if it goes low, it might go down to 4, maybe 5. That was COVID. That was such a flash in the pan. And if you look, because our industry is cyclical, goes up and down, we were going to be coming on in a time where the rates went up. It was probably going to be this year. Now, what happened was all of that, because and that's what a lot of people are saying, was that we should be at $4 a mile right now. We should be. But we also should have been at $230, $280 in 2020 and 2021. We weren't. That was when we were seeing $6 a mile. I know a driver that was getting paid $8 a mile for some of his loads. But that was to quickly rush things. That's gone away. Even if we end up in World War III those rates aren't coming back. Not anytime soon. And on one hand, we have drivers complaining that it's not keeping up with inflation, and then complaining that it's not $6 a mile. $6 a mile drastically contributes to the fact that inflation has spiked so much in such a short period of time. The cost of shipping drastically affects the inflation rate of everything. So, to sum it up, we don't have a driver shortage. We have a shortage of positions drivers want. Carriers that are operating regional fleets have waiting lists, especially carriers that have regional fleets and have dedicated accounts where they've cultivated the accounts. I know carriers that quickly pivoted from running the boards to, hey, here's these accounts that are near us. Let's go after them. And let's try to put together a route. They're not hurting right now. So the question for the carriers is, what are you doing to change your business model to keep up with the current times? Question to the drivers, what are you doing to secure that higher pay? Because if it's just complaining online that you're not making enough, and yet you're not willing to at least fill out an application or go to a place where you know that there are job postings for those rates that you're saying that you require, I don't know what to do for you. I don't. Those drivers that have been driving since the 80s that are saying that they need this amount, insurance companies are probably going to be trying to phase you out. They already are, I know that. I know from my experience with carriers that there's something called tofu. Too old for us. It's not from the carriers. So don't go to the carriers and be like, oh, I know it. No, it's from the insurance companies. Because carriers have to be able to insure you, otherwise they can't bring you on. And if the insurance company just never tells the carrier that you're approved, there's nothing the carrier can do. They can request it 16 times in a day. The insurance company is just going to ignore it. I saw it happen 10 years ago. I meet drivers that I know are over the age that insurance companies want to insure. And they can't leave their job. They can't leave the carrier that they're in because they're grandfathered in. If you didn't plan an exit strategy to get out of the seat, I don't know what to tell you. I feel bad for you. But at the end of the day, you probably need to look at driving schools. Because I know some of the absolute best instructors I had were the ones that had all that experience. But There's not a shortage of drivers. There's a shortage of positions that drivers are willing to do. And I have carriers that will go on and on about how, if drivers could just understand that the market's bad. I know drivers that weren't doing OTR when it was $6 a mile. What's going to change that now? And what happened when it was $6 a mile? Most of the people that could got a truck, got their own authority, and didn't run for a fleet. They didn't run for a carrier. Now you have these carriers that are banking on all these drivers that became owner apps during 2020 and 2021 going away. Most of them that I knew that might leave the owner app side already have. You're not going to have a mass flux of drivers coming from the owner app side. That was happening this spring. That was happening, up until September. When you have major companies that have been around forever, that are doing everything that they can to get out of OTR and try to focus on regional. And then you have other carriers that fleets operate under that the fleets keep being told it's just a phase. It hasn't been a phase for 10 years. If you're not pressuring the carrier to change the way they operate, then you need to figure out a different way for you to operate your fleet. Drivers, if you're not comfortable with how much you're making now, then you need to seek out the other positions because they're out there. In 2021, I was a driver. I was not an owner op, and I made close to $160,000. I'll put that out there. I wasn't doing food service. I was working 5.5, 6 days a week. I was also moving anywhere from 30 to 40,000 pounds of cargo every single route. Most of the time during that year, I was running solo. That's why I made that money. But it's out there. It just comes down to, can you physically do that job? Because food service is always hiring. Just comes down to you.